You guys know what this means. We're making something big. Wow, this looks so vibrant on camera. So today, technically, I'm making my first like princess dress on my channel. And no, it's not going to be one of those like big Disney princess dresses, although I have been tempted lately to make one of those just for funsies. But instead, the princess dress I'm making today is actually Princess Bubblegum from Adventure Time. Because for once, I'm actually trying not to make like a last minute Halloween costume. Even though I guess last year wasn't really like that, but most years it is. But I was trying to find a character with like pink hair because obviously I want to like use that to my advantage. And one of the characters I came across was Princess Bubblegum, and I literally just finished watching the entire series of Adventure Time. So I thought that this would be like the perfect time for me to make this dress. So this should just be like a really fun and easy video. And I'm really excited about it because this fabric is so bright. It's so exciting. Oh yeah, and before I get started, this fabric is from Fabric Wholesale Direct. I've used them in the past. They're not sponsored or anything. Their fabric is just really inexpensive, so I really recommend them, and the quality is honestly pretty good. And so this is 4 yards of their bridal satin in the color, I forgot what it's called, let me check. In the color American Beauty, I guess it's called. And I also got 1 yard of this one, which is also a bridal satin, and this one is just called regular old purple. And most people would be using like the shiny side, but I think I'm actually going to be using the matte side of both of these because one, I think it's going to help with like that kind of cartoon style that Adventure Time has. Not that I'm really going for that, but I think it'll look nicer. And I feel like this is just a little bit like bright and distracting. So the matte side is going to be my pretty side today. And yeah, like I said, it should be a fun and easy project. So let's get started. Ooh, look at that snazzy little transition. So like always, I just started out by measuring and cutting out all of my pieces. And like I said, because I'm going to be using the matte side as my pretty side, I traced all my pieces on the shiny side so I wouldn't have any of those marks. And honestly, this messed me up like so many times in the process. I kept sewing things the wrong way and having to seam rip it and re-sew them with the actual right sides together. But you know, it all worked out eventually. So the first pieces I have here are the 2 front pieces. So the left is the center and the right is the side piece. And you're just going to cut 2 of the center and 4 of the side. And next up is the back piece. And the back is where the zipper is going to go, so that's why it's cut in half. And so we're going to need a total of 4 of these. And I am using my satin fabric as also my lining fabric. But you could use a different fabric if you want to. And next here are the sleeve pieces. And we're just going to be cutting 2 of these ones. And I made these sleeves super poofy and I'm obsessed with them. They're so cute. And then here we have a bunch of like the smaller pieces that I just put all together. And spoiler alert, I didn't end up using the pocket pieces. I'll talk about it later, but I figured I might as well give you guys the measurements for them anyway. And last up is the skirt piece. And honestly, I was a little disappointed with the skirt. I didn't have enough fabric to make it as big as I wanted to. So if you are able to, I would recommend making it bigger than this, but I'll show you guys how I fixed that a little bit later. And look at me shaking things up a bit. I always start with my bodice pieces, but this time I'm starting with the collar pieces. And here again, I'm just showing you guys that we want the shiny side to be our wrong side. So I'm putting both of the matte sides together as my pretty side to pretty side. And then basically I'm just going to be pinning all around these pieces and sewing all around except for the inner circle of the collar. And I figured while we're at it, I might as well pin the bodice pieces together so we can sew these all in one go. So I'm just going to be taking our center piece and adding some notches along this curved edge so that it'll be able to fit around the side piece easier. This kind of gives the fabric a little bit of stretch. And then I'm just pinning it around the side piece on both sides, and we're just going to sew along that edge. And for both of these pieces, you should be doing like these steps twice. So we're using all of our collar pieces and all of our front pieces. But I'm just showing you guys once because we're just repeating the same exact process on the remaining front and collar pieces. And now we're just going to put those pieces to the side for a minute and work on the back pieces. And so we're just going to be adding some notches so that they fit the curve of our back a little bit better. So to do this, I'm folding these pieces in half and I'm making my notches go up for 9 inches and I'm making them take in 1/2 inch at the bottom. And once again, we're going to repeat that for all of the remaining back pieces. And now we're going to put the front and backs together. So I'm bringing back in my front piece and we're going to attach 2 back pieces to it across the shoulder seams and side seams. And again, repeat for the remaining front and back pieces. So now you should have 2 bodice pieces that look like this. And now's a good time to kind of do a little try on to make sure you're liking the fit of it and if you need to make any adjustments. And I was really happy with the fit so far, but there were a few little places that I wanted to make slight adjustments. So just using a washable chalk pen, I decided to draw the neckline a little bit lower, and I did the same thing around the underarm just to make it a little bit more comfortable when we add on the sleeve and the collar. And then I took it off and made those adjustments. And as you can see here, I actually pinned my bodice in half so that everything will be perfectly symmetrical. And then I made sure to repeat those exact same cuts on my lining bodice piece. And then one more try on to make sure that I'm really happy with it. And then I went ahead and started serging all of my edges. And I always say this, but if you don't have a serger at home, you could also use a zigzag stitch to kind of help the fraying not get so crazy while you're working. Because satin does in fact love to fray. And now that those edges are nice and finished, we're going to be adding some more notches around the curve of the collar and the bodice so that when we turn these right side out, they're going to sit really nice and flat. And this time, instead of just little slices, I'm making these little triangle cuts, but make sure you don't cut into your seam at all. So I'm just going to repeat that around all of these curves. And then once all the notches were done, I decided to take these to the iron to get everything nice and pressed before we start putting it all together. And look how nice that looks. And now it's timely fine, wow. And now it's finally time to add the collar onto the bodice. And so I'm going to be folding my bodice in half and finding the exact center of it so I know where I want the collars to meet. And now I'm going to add my collar on either side of this pin. And one side of your collar should be slightly bigger than the other one, and the bigger side is going towards the front. And once those first pins are in, I'm just going to continue pinning it around the neckline. And now it's time to baste this in place. So a basting stitch is just the longest stitch in your machine. It's a temporary stitch. And the way you set it up is you just put on your regular straight stitch, but change the length to be the absolute longest setting. And then you just stitch around it like normal, except we're not going to be adding a back stitch because once again, we're going to take these out later. And now that that's being held in place, we're going to bring in our second bodice that I was telling you guys about. And I'm just going to match together all the seams around the neckline and pin them in place so that everything's nice and lined up. And then we can go ahead and sew around the neckline again with our regular straight stitch. And then again, I'm adding more notches around the curve of the neckline. And then we can turn it right side out and we should have this super cute collar with a finished seam. But to make it lay a little bit nicer, next we're going to be understitching the seam. And so we're going to be opening up that seam that we just sewed, and I'm going to push all of the raw edges towards the lining. And then basically I'm just going to be stitching those down all across the neckline. And like I said, this will make it lay really nice and flat. And after that first day of sewing, I decided to do a little Joann's run, and I got a bunch of fun trims that were on sale because I wanted to add a little bit more detail to this dress so it's not so plain. And so I'm going to be taking this thin purple and just top stitching it around the edge of the collar. And I really should have done this before I sewed the collar to the bodice, but I didn't think of it then, so we're doing it now. And once I get to the back of it, I'm just cutting it where I want to finish it and very, very carefully melting the edge with a lighter as fast as I can, and then just finishing stitching it down. And I think it looks so adorable. And now it's time to start working on the sleeves. And I think the sleeves are my favorite part of this dress. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to fold it in half and sew across this little seam here. And again, I'm going to be serging these edges, which is especially important because the sleeve does not have a lining. And then we're going to be using some more basting stitches, and we're going to add 2 parallel basting stitches across the top edge of the sleeve because we're going to be using this to gather it up into that really cute puff sleeve shape. But we're not going to put the basting stitches all the way around. We're going to stop about 3 or 4 inches away from the bottom seam. And now that we have all of our basting stitches, we're going to start attaching the sleeves to the bodice, but I'm showing you guys here. I don't cut my sleeves perfectly symmetrical. One side should be slightly smaller, and that side is going to go towards the front of my bodice. And so I'm going to turn my sleeve right side out and put it inside of my bodice, which is inside out, so that these pieces will be pretty side to pretty side. And I'm first going to be matching up that bottom seam with the side seam of the bodice, and then I'm going to pin up to where my basting stitches start. And now we have to gather our really big sleeve into this little armhole. So we're going to take 2 of our basting stitches that are on the same side of the fabric, and we're going to carefully pull those so that it starts gathering the fabric up. And you're just going to gather it until it actually fits into this armhole, but you really want to focus the gathers at the very top of the sleeve. So I'm kind of arranging it and trying to get as many of the ruffles at the very top as I can. And once it's how you like it, you can pin it in place, and we're going to stitch all the way around. And now when you turn it right side out, are you ready for this? Look at this sleeve. It's not even done yet and I'm already obsessed. And now I'm just taking out all of those basting stitches that we had in there and serging down my edge again. And now that the top part of the sleeve is done, we still have to finish up the bottom half. And so to do this, I'm going to be using some really, really stretchy elastic. And the trick to this is we're going to be stretching our elastic as we sew it onto the sleeve. And then once it's all sewn in place, when you release the tension, it's going to gather up the sleeve and make a really pretty ruffle. So on the back side of my sleeve, I'm just marking out a line 3 inches away from the bottom of it, so I can make sure my ruffles are going to be straight all the way across. And then, like I said, we're going to sew on our elastic by pulling it as hard as we can and using a zigzag stitch to sew it down. And I honestly love this technique so much. It's so fun to do. And then this is what those stitches should be looking like. And when you release that tension, like I said, it gathers it up and makes it look super, super cute. And now here's a little try on, and you can just tell I'm in love with it. And so to finish up the rest of the sleeves, I'm just going to be adding a hem along the bottom. I decided to use a roll hem, but any kind will do. And then I'm just going to be using some of those other trims that I bought to add some more little stripes along the bottom. Alright, so here's the little situation that's going on. So the bodice is done and it looks super, super cute. I'm really happy with how this turned out. But now it's time to start working on the skirts. And quite honestly, I didn't order enough fabric and I wasn't able to make the skirt nearly as big as I wanted to. I probably should have cut down the sleeves a little bit and used a different lining for the bodice. But I wasn't really thinking that far ahead in the time, so it is what it is, and I can't order more fabric because it'll come like literally on Halloween at this point, which just isn't gonna work. So I'm gonna try to make do with what I have. And so I have these pretty small skirts that I showed you guys, and I really wanna make them a little bit bigger. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to add godets in them, which basically means that I'm just going to take little triangles of fabric and like insert it into the skirt. And this isn't going to be like exactly the look I was going for, but I think it'll be better than not doing anything. And so like I showed you guys, I also cut out pockets because I thought that would just make my life easier. But then I remembered I don't even have plans for Halloween, so I'm not really too worried about having to like carry stuff because I'm probably just gonna be hanging out with some friends. So I think I'm going to nix the pockets and put these in instead. So let me measure these for you guys. So the bottom part of my triangle is 22 inches across. And then it's an isosceles triangle, so the other two sides are 43 inches. And I honestly didn't measure these pieces out when I was cutting them because they're literally just like the scraps from the circle skirt. So this is as big as I could get it. I'm using all the fabric I have. But I'm gonna show you guys how to sew them in, and hopefully it'll get us closer to the look I'm going for. So actually, before I sew in the godets, I'm taking my back skirt piece and I'm folding it in half and cutting a slit in the back so that we have room to add the zipper in later. And I made mine 9 inches, that's usually just the number I go by. And the divots on the sides of the skirt are just because I was kind of in a stretch for fabric, so just ignore those. But now we're going to grab our front skirt piece and we're going to take one of our godets and we're going to start sewing these pieces together from the bottoms up. So I'm going to match up the bottom of the triangle with the bottom of the skirt and just pin it as far up as it can go until we're at the very end of the triangle. And then on the other side of that same skirt, I'm going to sew the other godet the exact same way. And now we can turn those triangles out and bring in our back skirt piece. And this time we're going to start by pinning the waists together of the front and back pieces. And then we're going to kind of pin it down from there. And you want the back piece to kind of flow into the other side of the godet. So I'll give you guys a close-up of that seam in just a second. And so you should have this triangular seam on the outside. And now here's what those pieces look like on, and I'm honestly happier with this shape than I thought I was even gonna be. And so because I liked the fit, I went ahead and serged all of those seams. I figured you guys had enough serging footage. And then I'm finding the center of my front skirt piece, and I'm going to be matching that up with the center of my bodice so we can finally start attaching these pieces together. And again, the same way we did before, once the centers are matched up, you can continue matching the rest of the seams up from there. And once they're all good to go, you can just sew right across. Or at least that's what I thought until I remembered that I should have sewn the belt in during that step. So yeah, ended up seam ripping that seam out and redoing this, because we should actually be adding in this little purple strip that we cut out in between the bodice and the skirt layers. And we want the pretty side of that purple piece to be facing the skirt, and we're just going to be adding it into the seam and repinning and stitching it like we did before. And then again, I serged this edge, and now when we turn it right side out, this is what it should be looking like. It's a little bit of a mess, but it gets better soon. Now we're going to be finishing up this little belt detail, and all I'm doing for this is I'm just taking this piece and folding it in half inwards, and then I'm pinning the top edge down and top stitching it across. And there's what that finished detail should look like. And now we're really close to finishing the dress. All we have left to do is add in a zipper in the back. I'm using an invisible one, but you don't have to. I've done lots of other invisible zipper tutorials in my more beginner-friendly videos, so I just went ahead and added mine in. But once that's all done, you're going to want to try on the dress and mark out the length you want it to be, and then we can just hem the bottom edge all the way around. And that's it for the dress, but we actually still have a bit more work to do because I still have to make PB's crown. So for this, I took another trip to Joann's and I got a whole bunch of crafting supplies, including like paints and trims and this little like foam piece. So I started out by painting the foam piece to have more of a shimmery gold finish because I was not into this like brown matte look. And then after that, I took some of the thickest wire I could find at Joann's that was in the gold color. And I made a loop that would fit around the circumference of my head and then just twisted the ends together. And then I kind of folded those back on themselves to make this rounded shape at the top. And I think having this many layers of the wire for the top half made it sturdy enough to like hold the gem I wanted to put up there. So this technique ended up working out pretty well. And then once that foam was dry, I traced out the shape of the tiara I wanted to make and just cut that out. And then I cut a hole out of the center of it so that I would have enough room to like display the jewel that I was using. And this jewel is actually just one of those like glass pebbles that people sometimes use for decoration. I just ordered a batch of them and took the roundest one I could find out of it. And then I cut a second smaller circle out of some more foam. And then I used super glue to attach the glass to the foam and put my wire in between that. And then use the smaller foam on the other side to kind of like sandwich the wire in it. And then while that was drying, I decorated the rest of the crown with just a bunch of different trims that I bought. And at this point, I decided to be smarter and actually use gloves because my hands were already covered in super glue at this point. But this was actually really fun, except for the fact that I was very much so running out of glue. But I just added as many like cute details I could around the band. And then to attach the band to the wire, I actually decided to just hand stitch it on and tie it around the wire. And this was surprisingly secure, and I think it gave a really nice finish because I didn't need to use any more glue for it. And yeah, once that was all done, this is how the crown turned out. I really like it, and I think it's a lot cuter than just having like a plain crown. I know PB's doesn't have like all of this like decoration on hers, but I really like it. I think it's a really nice touch. And now the last little thing to do is to make a costume for Basil because of course she has to be included in my costume. And so I'm going to be making her into Science, the little mouse that PB has. And for this, I just picked up some fleece in these 3 colors. And the first thing I did is I just cut really long strips of each of these colors. And then I just sewed these all together into one big flat piece of fabric in the order of white, orange, and yellow. And then once they were all attached, I just folded this in half into a size that would fit around her chest, plus a few extra inches for wiggle room. And then I almost cut this into like a sleeve shape. So I took a little bit off the bottom and then kind of made a diagonal shape. And then I matched up those seams and sewed across this edge here. And then the last little thing to do on the sweater was to just cut an armhole towards the bottom. And that's our little doggy sweater. And then I like to be extra, and I also made her a little hat. And honestly, I had no idea what I was doing for this part. I just kind of like cut out a shape and kept fitting it to her. I just kind of cut a rectangle and made this little curve and then did some little ear slits. And I just kept playing with the shape until it fit her decently well. So I kind of made the edges curve into this triangle shape and attached ties to the bottom of it. And then I whipped up some really cute little mouse ears and then just sewed those to the sides of the little ear slits. And yeah, it's really nothing fancy, but I think it's really cute. And now it is finally time to put all the pieces together and show you guys the final costume. I'm so happy with how this whole dress turned out. And I'm honestly surprisingly happy with the skirt. I really like the effect that the Godets added because it kind of gives that more like fitted illusion that kind of fits PB style better, but it still gives me enough flair to like twirl it around and everything. But my favorite part might be Basil in this costume. Like, she was being such a good sport with keeping her hat on and everything, and I think she was just really happy to be included. Also, can we normalize like wearing crowns out? Because I kind of just want to wear this little tiara thing. I'm obsessed with it. I think it turned out so cute. I kind of just want to wear it everywhere. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys liked this tutorial. And everybody, I hope you have a happy and safe Halloween. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!